Yeah, so I've kind of done like 15 things at the same time. This is a very Ian thing to do, right? Like
What's the end thing to do?
too many notes. I always think of Amadeus, which I know you haven't seen yet, but
No.
the Mozart has just
Yeah, it's Mozart.
shown his new piece to the his patron, and he asks for feedback, and the guy says, too many notes. Just cut a few, and they'll be perfect." And you're telling Mozart to do that, which I think is hilarious. I love that bit.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah.
so in the past 2 months, the last video I did was Reprise, which is an
Yes.
incredibly important video to me.
And it was a great video.
And then started The Body. And then did this little thing where I got married to...
You did. Married to the love of your life.
Lonnie, Ms. I forgot. She said she doesn't want to be Mrs. Rich. That's her mother. We're not doing the name change thing.
Are you Mr. Rich?
I said I would. It's just like,
really?
Yeah. What the hell do I care? The
Yeah.
thing is, the whole name changing thing is just dumb.
It's an antiquated construct.
Yeah, I can see a reason if you're gonna have kids or stuff like that, but otherwise there's just not really a point. Yeah, I'd be like Mr. Rich. Hell yeah, Mr. Martin's boring.
Ian Rich sounds pretty great. Rich is just the kind of last name that goes with everything. Like, my sister just had a baby, like last week actually. And the baby's father's last name is Reed, so her name is Celeste Reed. And we figured out that Reed as a last name goes with everything.
Yeah, it's a good one. But there was that, and then in the midst of the run up to the wedding, like one of the most significant events of my life that I'm going to remember for as long as I live, I'm supposed to be writing and working on The Body. And talk about like what spinach and a milkshake combined together. You know, talk about two things that don't go together.
Yeah, it's like mixing oil and water. Just not gonna work.
And there's layers. There's layers of things to be terrified about both of those individually, and then you The Body is an episode I've been thinking about writing since I watched it for the first time, and I'm still struggling with. It is deeply depressing, and the way that I write is to emotionally expose myself to this thing constantly.
You dive in headfirst.
Yeah, and it's hours and hours and hours and hours of sitting with the material. On the other hand,
Mommy,
I'm wanting to write my vows. And that's some of the most high pressure writing that I've ever been. Like, you know, and in the case of both, it's funny. Like the thing that you're looking for, the pressure, the fear of failure you have is not finding the perfect words. I'm sure every groom, every bride in history that wrote their own vows was faced with like, well, what do I say? Like, how do I express the thing? And most people aren't writers. You know, and so what do you do and how do you do it? But even if you are a writer, like I wouldn't call myself a writer, but writing's part of what I do. It's like, well, what is there to say about this thing that is one of the most important things that has ever happened to me? You know, that's a lot of pressure, Jack.
It is, Ian.
Yeah. What has ended up happening? And then I decided to start working out really hard and intermittent fasting. And
the intermittent fasting, that's a bitch.
That's sort of lesser down the tier. But I just hit a point, it was about a week or two before the wedding, where I was like, this is a family show. F it. I cannot combine these two. I don't want to. The thing is, like, every single video that exists on the channel, I essentially have no memory of writing it or of making it, you know. It just exists. Like, I know I did it. I vaguely remember putting the words together, but the act of the work is not a specific memory, right? And I know when the body is done and up on the channel, I'm not going to remember writing it. But I will remember the week running up to my wedding, right?
Mhm.
And I will remember that time with her, and I will remember the honeymoon. And I just didn't want to mix despair and sadness and tragedy into this. So I just did something that's very unusual for me. I full stopped and just stopped, and I was like, all right, I'm just, we're spending this time together and so forth. And then we went on the honeymoon afterwards, and now I'm back and faced with the normal writing challenges of
It's just
writing the
back
body,
to
which would already be one of the most challenging. By the way, hi everyone.
business as
Welcome to the
usual.
podcast of the nerds. I'm Ian.
And my name is Jack.
We'll get to the discussion a little bit today. We have some setting up to do with today's discussion. We were going to talk about something else, but just to wrap up, I am working on the body now. I've had to ADD sequester myself so that blockers turn on the computer and I can't access anything except my script. And then I put on my VR headset so that I'm sitting in a black void with nothing but the page, because I have such a case of the I don't want us, because who wants to spend all their time feeling sad, right?
I mean,
I've heard from many fans that the body derails rewatches.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, you just feel that when you do a rewatch, you feel that episode coming.
I don't know. For me, excuse me. I don't know.
Okay.
I have a thing for melancholy. I don't know, man. Like it's
but it's
fun, but at the same time, I like to be hurt. I don't know.
It's different.
Am I a masochist?
It's different. Like, it's not Wild at Heart. You and I are the same. I love the pain of Wild at Heart. I love the pain of Becoming Part 2.
Yeah.
I do not relish going through the body again. It's something I do.
No. The body feels like a smack in the face. It's like getting hit by a freight train. Especially that the silence is terrifying to me.
The silence is deafening in the body. There's a bunch to talk about in the video itself, but anyway, today on the podcast, we were going to talk about what was the show that we picked at the end of the last time?
It was a show called Yellow Jackets, which I have seen the first season of. I believe there's only one season so far, but I think they're doing another. It is a good show, and I really like it. I don't know how much you would like it, Ian, because there's a lot of, I don't know, it's not a horror per se, but there's a lot of unpleasant stuff in it. And at the end of the day, I felt that it just wouldn't have been a good choice for what we do here. As much as I do enjoy it.
So one of the reasons why there's been a huge gap between that podcast and this one,
it's like two months now, right? Or
in addition to the goings on in my life that I was just talking about, is we re-rolled what we were going to talk about and landed on Buffy season 8.
Yes, We've been entrenched in the Buffy fandom for a long time now, and it's something that we always get asked, and we finally did it, and we're finally going to talk about it.
Yeah, this is year 8, or I just finished year 8 of the channel, and for 8 years, people have been asking me, "Have you read the comics? Have you read the comics?" And I have,
I get it
mostly with an asterisk here or there, said no. And I have taken a couple of runs at the comics, but we decided if it landed on the podcast list that we were going to get into and discuss it. So
I started reading after the fall, but I just couldn't get into it. This was a while ago.
I've taken a couple of runs. I own the big and like library anthology versions of the comics. They're beautiful. The first 3 or 4. I've taken a couple of runs and always get derailed. And thought we would get through it. And then Jack and I were a little less successful at just banging through the comics than we thought we were going to, and time sort of stretched on, and here we are.
And for accountability's sake, it ended up being me towards the end there that was dragging my feet a little harder than Ian was. Ian, you finished quite some time ago now. I finished yesterday.
Jack, if I had $1 for every time I've heard that, I'd be a rich man.
Hey, what's that supposed to mean, huh?
No,
I mean,
no,
that's
no.
fair, I guess.
No, Ian, you finished quite some time ago. Anyway,
Oh, I get it now. That's what she said.
there you go. So we're going to be talking Buffy season 8. We'll sort of explain the ins and outs of that discussion later, and then after that, we have a setup. We want to set something up with you.
Yes.
A new section. I missed the readings, but they didn't really fit in what we do. So yeah. So we were kind of strategizing. We came up with something new, and we're going to talk about that in the third section before we say goodbye. And I think it'll be fun. But Jack, what have you been watching for the past couple of weeks?
My whole entertainment life, shall we say, is being entirely consumed by Supernatural. I finally did it. Supernatural, I started watching season 1 a few years back, but I gave up because I really didn't like it. But then after a million recommendations by a million people, I gave another shot. Ian, you in particular, you encouraged me to stick through it and get through season.
Because I think that you and I had a very similar experience of the first season. I think I made a run at Supernatural and bounced off of it halfway through season 1, and then came back to it and tried again and got through it and got more. We've had a very parallel experience. So why did you bounce off of season 1? What were your issues with season 1?
Okay, Supernatural stands, don't come for me. Okay, please don't come for me. But I don't particularly like Sam and Dean. I don't particularly like them.
Yeah.
Jensen and Jared, they're great. Don't get me wrong. It's the way the characters are written that I don't like. And
well, season 1 specifically, I think they morphed into different characters.
I kind of like them now, and it's funny. I started off hating Dean, but now he's my favorite of the two so far. I'm halfway through seasons in 5, by the way. But
so that's the big.
Is it season 5? No, season 6.
Are you on the Leviathan season or the Angels versus Demons season?
Last season ended with Sam jumping into the hole with Satan, and then
that's season. So you're on season 6.
Season 6, yeah.
Which is the worst season in the series.
The arc is dragging. Like, they haven't even brought up the Leviathans yet. I'm like halfway through. I don't know. It's very strange.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Anyway, so Ian, you recommended that I skip the first season, and we all know I can't do that. If I haven't seen it, I just cannot do that. And look, I still didn't like season 1, but there are a few fun Monster of the Week type episodes that I don't mind. But the whole time I was begging for more characters to build an ensemble. But season 1 is just Sam and Dean, pretty much. Yeah. Just Sam and Dean.
Well, and Dad would want us to. Dad wants us to do it. Dad.
He's barely there, and I felt like every time they would bring in a new character I liked, they'd kill them off, and I'm like, "What the hell? Please, just give me more."
Yeah, but Supernatural, like Star Wars, no one ever really dies.
Yeah, I know, that's the thing. Yeah.
It starts to sap the stakes as it goes on.
It does definitely, and well, I'll get into that. But hang on. So I hated Dean, the tough guy, and I preferred Sam. But however, I prefer Dean now. I think is a much more interesting character, and Sam's kind of whiny. I don't know. I love the two actors. They are both great.
And they are beautiful, beautiful men.
Beautiful men, and decent actors. They are. They're not terrible actors.
Yeah.
But I like every other character in the ensemble more than Sam and Dean. I love Castiel. I love Bobby. Ruby was great, and I do actually like how some of the angel/demon characters are recast once their vessel is killed. It gets a bit over the top, but I just think it's a really interesting tool. But in saying that, I really liked the first actor they cast as Ruby, but I didn't like the following one as much.
I felt similar.
Yeah.
It's my experience of it was it's a good popcorn show, right?
Yeah.
It just more and more and it becomes incredibly bingeable. And I don't know what I've been trying to get through The Wire for months and months and months and months. And I'm having the weirdest experience with that show. I've never had this happen with any other show. I go weeks between watching an episode, and then I'm nearly to the end of season 1, and then I watch another episode, and it's like I haven't missed anything. I know exactly where we are. I know who these people are. I understand. And then I watch one, and The Wire is very slow. The experience of the first season is that it's very slow burn. That's not a criticism, just the way the fiction is. And then, so I don't find The Wire super bingeable so far. And I'm not sure what the Supernatural, man. I shot
Supernatural. You can fly through it.
4. Yeah,
I watch a minimum of 2 episodes a day, but sometimes if I'm bored and feeling tired, I'll get into bed and I'll watch 4 or 5.
Just crank through them.
Yeah. And look, overall, the show is great, but it's not fantastic or amazing. It's hard to put into words, really. And I'll definitely finish it, and I want to finish it, and I'm looking forward to getting through it. But it feels it falls short in some ways. It's like, for me, when I watch a show or a movie, I imagine there's like a certain line, like a finish line of sorts, then it has to cross for me to really fall in love with it. And in some ways, look, I do have some love for Supernatural, but it's not Buffy love. It's not Midnight Mass love. And the biggest issue for me is that the payoffs aren't super satisfying. And again, it's hard to put into words because they're not exactly unsatisfying. I just wish they did more.
Yeah, it's a fun ride, but you sometimes get the sense that they don't always know where they're going. And then which makes the climaxes feel sort of unplanned for and kind of just sort of okay.
Right. And there are these great moments that seem like they're building towards something really, really great. But then we get to a climax or a payoff and it just kind of fizzles rather than bangs. And like you said, like you touched on it just then, that there's not a lot of stakes because someone dies, they're coming back. And like they don't even try to hide the fact, like Dean dies at the end of season 2, and then he's immediately back. Like literally the start of the first the next season, he's back. There's no question. We have the same thing with Sam. I guess also spoilers.
I mean, there's 14 seasons or whatever it is, so
that's also why I don't want to like drag my feet and like leave it for a while, because there's just so much to get through.
Supernatural more than the thing that I always felt with Buffy is that because Buffy, and it's just a simple comparison because we're all steeped in Buffy's theme driven. I think that adds substance to it. There you can have problems where the theme leads the story, or where characters are symbols rather than characters. But by and large, I think that theme helps create intent for the story. And and I think that Whedon came in kind of with an idea in mind of where this was going to end up over the course of the season, even though there are many steps along the way where maybe a piece had to be moved or whatever it may actually be. And Supernatural lacks some of that substance, but the thing is, I feel bad even criticizing it because it knows what it is. It doesn't try to be anything more than entertaining. And it's very entertaining.
And do you know what? I think part of my problem here is that I just need to stop comparing everything to freaking Buffy. Like,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
and that's a problem I think I'm always going to have.
That that may have
Supernatural.
been one of the times I bounced off it. Was initially when I started doing this and fans would recommend me shows to watch. I would say, "Oh, have you seen Supernatural?" And like the same thing happened with Veronica Mars. I watched a half season of Veronica Mars, and I was like, "Well, this isn't Buffy." Watched a half season of Supernatural. I was like, "Well, this isn't Buffy. Nothing is Buffy." That's kind of what makes Buffy Buffy. It's like super unique.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, it's tropey and trades on stereotypes.
Yeah.
But
And
cooks up something that is unique.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And Supernatural is schlocky, and I don't think schlock is necessarily a bad thing.
No.
It's fun. It's very popcorny, as you said, and it's pretty easy to watch. And as a horror fan, I love that it takes its horror pretty seriously.
It's very graphic.
And
I love TV.
I love the lore. I'm a big sucker. I have no idea why, but even though I'm an atheist, I'm a big sucker for religious themes, particularly when it comes to hell versus heaven. I find that stuff really, really fun. And
it's very exactly Constantine.
Yes,
in that way. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it. I think I watched every season that was available at the time, so I went through 11 seasons. So 3, 4, and 5 were the best. 6 was the worst, so far, and my second favorite of the non main story was 11. Oddly enough.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, I went into it spoiled on quite a few things. But it's almost like I knew what happened, but I didn't necessarily know how, and so it's still been like fun.
Since it's a fun ride show, I worry less and less about spoilers anymore. I think if a story is well told, then spoilers can't completely rob you of
I disagree.
What there is to get out of that. If if the enjoyment of the story is predicated on a turn or a surprise, other than maybe the mystery or thriller genre, which is about the puzzle, then I kind of think like if Buffy's gonna stab Angel at the end of Becoming Part 2, it's still pun intended stabs. That moment still is loaded with drama. I'm not saying spoilers don't matter. I'm saying that anymore I just don't worry about them as much. I don't think that they are as detracting as people believe, unless maybe the story needed a little more punch anyway.
I disagree, because knowing what's going to happen it alters the experience I get to have with the show, and the experience matters to me. That absolutely matters.
I agree. I'm not saying they don't matter. I'm just saying, for me personally, I still think, like, if you know what happens in the body is still a devastating episode of television to watch. But there is the first experience. It is different. I'm not saying it's not irrelevant. I'm not saying it's irrelevant.
I just feel like knowing what's going to happen, it's something about that robs you of the experience you could have had without knowing.
We also live in a spoilers terrified culture, and I'm a little sick of it.
That's the thing too. Like, I've made the mistake so many times now where I'm watching a show I haven't seen, and I Google one little detail that I'm confused about, and then I stumble on a spoiler. So much so where now I just refuse to do it with Supernatural, because I'm just like, look, this isn't super important anyway, so I'm just gonna let it go.
Yeah. Supernatural ends up to me being more like a legacy comic book, like Batman or Superman, or there's so much content. There's so many years of Batman. And some years are better than other years. But you come back to it because you like Batman, because you like what they're playing with. And Supernatural evolves very slowly, but essentially after season 5, every season is is an arc, but then it's sort of contained, and then the next season starts, and then the next season starts.
Oh, okay.
And the new season may play a little bit with how the last arc ended, but essentially there's a reset button at the beginning of every season. So there's stakes within the season, but within the series there was less so.
Yeah. But I like the horror. I really like the lore. Oh, and the meta stuff is amazing. I love the tongue-in-cheek meta stuff. Like, there was an episode with Linda Blair, who played Reagan from The Exorcist, and right at the end, Dean is like, he says, "Hey, did that chick look familiar to you?" And Sam's like, "No." He's like, "Hey, you hungry? I feel like some pea soup." Which I just thought was such a nice little call to The Exorcist.
You ain't seen nothing yet, is all I'll say.
I freaking loved the teddy bear that has an existential crisis. Even if the rest of the show sucks, that makes the whole experience worth it, because I love that so much.
It's funny. This may be relevant later in the discussion, but it's almost like if you give me like episodes of joy, it kind of makes the entire experience worth it, even if it doesn't add up to something overall that I loved.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's cool. I have been watching. I've been busy getting married and trying to steep myself in the body. So haven't been watching a lot. Lonnie and I finally got burned out on Survivor. Like
there's a lot of Survivor, isn't there? How's that been going for like 20 years or something?
And I think, they're on season 40 something. I think we watched 20 plus seasons, and it was just our dinner show. I
remember years ago there was a season filmed in the Australian outback. Like,
that was like season 2.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so 40 seasons, they must be doing a couple a year or something.
They do 2 a year. The seasons are 12 episodes. Wow. And they used to be all over the world. Now they're filmed in Fiji. I think it was just too difficult for them to do it the entire time. But we got hooked. Lonnie loved it. She introduced me to it. The structure of the show is really interesting, and there are a lot of interesting characters. Cochrane for the win. As we went through, but eventually we finally got bored of it, or just kind of burned out. So
it is kind of the same thing over and over, that show.
But that's the thing, is the structure of the game naturally creates interesting drama, and and the characters are. I've never been a big reality TV person, but Survivor has a structure that naturally creates the drama each time, and you wait for sort of the marquee moments that are coming during the seasons because you've seen previous games. But anyway, Lonnie and I both have shows that fans have been recommending us watch for years. So Plex added a feature called Watch List, where you could add shows that aren't from your DVD rips. It says, "Oh, you have Amazon Prime, this, that, and the other thing." So in Plex, you can create a giant master list of all of the shows that you want to watch, and if it's not on your Plex server, it'll bounce you over to the service that.
Wow, that's really clever.
Yeah, that like Amazon Prime or whatever. So she and I sat down and made a master list of all the things fans have been recommending to us, or tentpole shows like The Wire that we've been meaning to watch for years. And the first one we rolled, because that's how we do in this house.
That's how we roll?
Yes. Is Person of Interest.
Okay.
Which is a show starring Jim Caviezel and Ben from Lost. I can never remember the actor's name.
Oh, Jim Caviezel. He played, he was Jesus, wasn't he?
He was Jesus. Jesus Caviezel. And
Ben from Lost, isn't that Matthew Fox? Oh no, that's Jack, isn't it?
That's Jack. Ben was the leader of the others.
Oh, I didn't see that far in.
And it should be really up my alley. Spoiler alert. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about Person of Interest because honestly, we've heard there's a point when it gets good.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine someone making a review of Buffy from just having watched season 1, right? Or just
Yeah,
have it,
yeah. I mean, when it
granted
gets good is Prophecy Girl, like
yeah,
literally the end of the season.
granted there's a percentage of people out there who would watch season 1 and be delighted. But the thing that makes Buffy Buffy, that has the widest appeal, that rakes people in, isn't in season 1. It develops later on. And
Season 2, I think, is the hook anyway. From
yeah, supposedly Person of Interest gets really good in seasons 3, 4, and 5.
Okay.
But the reason people have been recommending it to me is Amy Acker starts by making guest appearances in season 2, I believe.
My girl Fred.
Yeah. And then becomes more of a regular as the show goes on. So we have now watched, and the only spoiler I will say is an incredibly light spoiler. It's a diet spoiler. Amy Acker is a bad guy in the show.
Okay.
And you learn that when she's in her first
See, I
scene.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I always thought she was like the protagonist.
No.
She
I don't know where things go, but at least when she, as of the volume of the show that we've watched so far, and she's doing kind of a Fred thing, and is a bad guy in the show, and it's so much fun. It's so
I can imagine.
Amy Acker's delightful. And
there must be so like she's like joyfully hurting people or something.
Yes.
Wow,
yes.
that is dark.
Yes,
that is dark.
And just like Fred, she's kind of a scientist, computery person. She's more comfortable alone, more comfortable with computers, but is bright and pleasant. And as she does terrible things,
that sounds right up my alley.
It's a ton of fun. Every time Amy Acker's on the screen. The rest of the time, it is a pretty rote, by the numbers spy procedural show.
And some of those can be okay. Like I thought Burn Notice was cool.
One of my favorite comfy blankie shows of all time is Castle. And Castle is a rigidly formulaic procedural show. Cop show.
I like the Bourne movies because they're just spy action.
It's a little different in movie format, right? 22 episodes of television is a lot of television, and it is so steeped in cliche and all of that. But we're starting to get to the point where it starts to play with. It's a little like Supernatural. It's just starting to play with some of its own established cliches and its own established lore.
And so it's tickling you a little bit. It's giving you a bit of a taste.
Yeah, Lonnie and I were groaning through episodes, and then every once in a while, it just gets really good all of a sudden. Amy Acker episodes typically, and we just turn to each other and say, she and I are. It's a constant running dialogue of like, "Wow, I'm in," or making fun of terrible lines.
See, that's the thing. Watching something terrible with another person can be fun.
Yeah, I don't think I would get through it. And this is a spy show. It should be deep in my wheelhouse. Yeah. But I think part of it is, too, I really don't like Jim Caviezel's performance. It is so mumblecore. It is so mumbly. That we've started, Lonnie and I have started referring to the show as Mumbles of Interest. You want to watch any Mumbles of Interest tonight? And the way you say yes, it's so heavily ADR'd, and I think it's because it's so mumble. It's just, he's going to have a bad day. And occasionally it like lapses into CSI terrible, like, do you think he got the point? We just okay show. Ben's wonderful for basically the first season or two of the show. I wish I could remember the actor's name. We were watching it for Ben. and a couple of ancillary characters. I like the police officers in the show. A couple of ancillary characters around, but Jim Caviezel is so flat. And I'm not saying that's his performance. That could be the direction. That could, like, the scripts are nothing to write home about. But just kind of steadily. I love the idea too. The idea is, can I tell? The idea is set up in the pilot, so I don't think it's too much of a spoiler. But the idea is Ben, after 9/11, creates a machine that creates a program that reads all of the aggregate data online to look for signs of terrorism coming up. Right? So crimes that will be like what happened in 9/11. And it uses it by accessing webcams around the world, accessing social media data, and it creates an AI to sort and scan and process all of the data. And it occasionally comes up with a social security number and provides that number. And that number they go after, and it's either going to be a victim of terrorism or it's going to be the terrorist. But what Ben discovered, and they sold the machine to the government, but what Ben discovered is that the machine was so good at what it was doing that it also discovered victims of violent crime and single victims of murder that weren't acts of terrorism. And so, but Ben needs someone else to help save these people, and the government isn't interested in saving them. So he, behind the scenes, made it so the machine would give him those individuals that were at risk. And he recruits Jim Caviezel, the spy, to help him save those people. And that's the setup.
That's interesting.
It's a wonderful setup. Yeah, it's a wonderful setup. Once an episode, and that's all I'm going to say about it.
Also a major invasion of privacy.
Which they have to deal with, which is part of the... and the fascinating thing about this, I don't know how much you know about...
it's very true in real life.
Yeah.
So one, is it the Seven Eyes protocol or something like that?
Well, I can't remember Snow. What was his name?
Edward Snowden.
Edward Snowden, thank you. Revealed the government, the NSA's spying program.
Yeah.
Several years after this show came out. So this show was actually ahead of the curve.
Wow.
Yeah, in predicting what was going to happen.
There's also this information alliance treaty with, I think it's Australia, the US, and the UK. It's something there's something eyes, but it's just all intelligence sharing stuff. It's creepy stuff.
So once an episode, they get a social security number, and they have to research the person to figure out if they are the victim or the villain, which is interesting, and what's going to happen to prevent the crime from actually happening. And you can see that lends itself to interesting procedural ideas.
Absolutely, yeah.
But like a lot of shows, there's a fascinating bit to the show that is more interesting than that, and that is this machine that he created. And I'm not going to say anything about that because the episodes that were good and the episodes that Amy Acker are concerned with are the ones that focus on the machine that Ben built, the AI, to go through all of this data. And the way that I think they're leaning with seasons 3, 4, and 5 is moving away from just the individual crime of the week, which is like, okay, it's a stockbroker this week, and it's a mother, a soccer mom this week, and it's a gang member this week, which is fine. It's a wonderful structure for, again, I don't have a problem with formula. I think the 22 episode shows need a framework to hang the stories on, and this is a wonderful one to do it in. But they created this wonderful, at the time, bit of science fiction that was way more interesting than the individual procedural stories itself.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we just last night we watched the first episode of season 3. The last couple of episodes have been really good. Amy Acker, according to IMDb, is now much more of a regular in 3, 4, and 5. So we'll see. I'm hoping that, in my experience, Buffy season 1 is much more fun to watch after I saw the whole show. So when I go back, then I get more out of those first season episodes than I did on the first run.
I wonder if I'll have that experience with Supernatural. Probably not, but maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
I certainly liked Dean a lot more rewatching season 1, and that was a huge problem for me the first time through.
Yeah,
because he is sort of the ultimate broy.
Yeah,
boring,
and I hate that. It's boring.
But dude, so boring. But we should move on. That's Supernatural and Mumbles of Interest. So,
person of interest has always been vaguely on my radar because of Amy Acker, but I've never had any great want to watch it. But yeah, anyway, Ian, what are we doing next?
Buffy season 8. Now, this is the first time we've done this. There are 8 graphic novels to talk about. And
so this could be a freaking mess is what we're saying.
Yeah, and you and I are like, we're still podcast amateurs, right?
Yes.
You edit, you have a lot more exposure to podcasts than I do. I make a YouTube channel. None of that really comes down to like, what's the best way to have an hour-long discussion of Buffy season 8.
Well played. I like that.
So we're going to try our best here. I'm not going to summarize the entire thing. There's way too much content to summarize. What we're going to do is we're going to run through each of the books. I've come up with a movie tagline for each of the 8 graphic novels, and we're going to hit highlights and lowlights of each one and then talk about the book as a whole. Does that sound about right?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Before we get into this, I think something that can inform the discussion is the book ends with what is essentially a letter from Joss Whedon. I believe it's the outro or the I'm not sure what the original way this was posted was, if this was in the last physical issue of Buffy season 8. But I thought it kind of informed the discussion as I see it going. So I wanted to read you just the first 2 paragraphs of the letter. So for a little bit of context, Buffy season 8 is 8 graphic novels. They were published by Dark Horse. They illustrated by, I have his name later on, Jeff Gianti, I believe it is.
Yeah, I believe that's it. Yeah.
And Joss wrote several of the issues specifically and laid out just as he did for the other seasons, laid out where the season arc was going to go. And there are guest writing issues from Drew Goddard. Jane Espenson wrote a couple of the episodes, so on and so forth. It worked in a similar way to the way the show did, where he was kind of the season runner, and then individual people were responsible for many of the issues. So that is some context on Buffy season 8. It picks up right where Buffy season 7 left off, or rather, the way the Buffy seasons worked. Buffy dies at the end of season 5. A couple of months have passed. That's the summer between the seasons airing. And then that time has passed in the universe when season 6 premieres. And that's very similar here. You get the sense that some time has passed before season 8. So here's the letter. Here's the letter from Joss. So our endless season ends. We've laughed, we've cried, we've thrown up in our mouths a little. But most of all, we've learned. Not you guys, us. We've learned what you like, what you don't, how this TV show translated to the world of comics, and how it didn't. We've lost a few fans along the way, and hopefully gained a few. Not a very good setup to Buffy season 8. I can't say exactly how much this has changed in our lives or our work. The only thing that's certain is this. All of us involved in this venture, without exception, have weirder looking hair. Very Joss. If you've read this volume, you've got a sense of where we're headed for season 9. Back a bit to the everyday trials that made Buffy more than a superhero, that made her us. I was so excited to finally have an unlimited budget that I wanted to make this book an epic. But I realized along the way that the things I loved the best were the things you loved the best. The peeps, the down-to-earth recognizable people, and Mecha Dawn. She has a tail. So that's what we'll try to evoke next season, along with the usual perils and a few new ones, of course. Meaning none of that is actually what season 8 is doing. It's not the down-to-earth stuff. It's the cosmic stuff. It is giant world in peril, globe trotting.
And then it tries to correct itself, but it doesn't overcorrection in my view. But
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into it. But I thought, given that is the letter that season 8 ends with, which struck
is basically
me as
an apology.
Yeah, it struck me as curiously hat in hands. Like, well, I think that kind of, even from the creator himself, I think that kind of sets up the discussion as we're about to have it. And if you're a lover of season 8, there's a lot that I enjoyed as well. So let's get into it.
Same.
And Jack, anything you want to add before we get going?
Hold on to your butts. I don't know. Nothing. that actually wasn't the best setup.
I like it.
Whatever.
All right. So just in general, the major plot arc, before we get into the individual books, Twilight, a big bad with big powers, is teaming up with the government to put an end to the world of magic. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty much it, yeah.
We have so just like Buffy season 7 ended by making a bunch of women in the world slayers, that is so now, and Buffy's running a team of slayers, she's training an army of slayers in Scotland. So the B story plots, the subplots of this one, we have rogue slayers that have stolen an island in Italy and are robbing people. Dawn is big. Harmony brings vampires mainstream. Xander starts dating one of the slayers. Faith and Giles are together. The kitchen sink.
Not together, but
not dating.
Together.
But, have teamed up. Both ostracized from Buffy have teamed up. And I left in your scream at the end of this for the kitchen sink. All right. The first book is called The Long Way Home. Buffy and the Potentials are hiding out in Scotland. Some familiar foes make trouble, and Dawn gets a big. That's how I left that one. Highlights. The return of Ethan Rayne was a highlight for me in this one. That I believe that actor who played Ethan Rayne died during.
Yeah, Robin Sachs died.
Yeah, during Buffy. So I loved hearing him come back. He has a short little run in the books, but it was amazing to me. You know how when you read something in someone's voice, I heard Ethan Rayne's voice distinctly in my head. I really loved that. Me too. At first, I really enjoyed the unlimited budget and the scope. I loved building out the world and seeing more. You know, at some point, Sunnydale starts to feel claustrophobic, and the denizens of Sunnydale start to feel a little stupid. You know, Snyder saying that the police of Sunnydale are deeply stupid.
It's funny though, because Sunnydale also gets bigger over time. Like in the first episode, we're told it's this tiny little town, but then it's got a university, a dock, an airport.
Yeah, as the stories needed, they start to build it out. So I really loved it did feel appropriately epic in places, as it would if these stories were not bounded by, a 22 episode television budget. That was really enjoyable. I really loved the main artist on it was George Gianti. I'm looking at his name now, and I apologize. I know I'm mispronouncing that. There were several artists. So most of the graphic novels had like a main A story and then a B story that ended it, like a one-off or something like that, and it was usually illustrated by someone else. But he did the main arc, and the main action of the first story concerns Warren capturing Willow, and yes, Warren is back, and I really love the way that he's back. I thought it was a lot of fun. And Buffy, there's a bit where he captures Willow, and Buffy sees what's going on inside Willow's head, and I thought that was really cool. And sort of like them fighting back and getting Warren back felt appropriately action movie epic. Moved along at a nice clip. And my favorite panel from it was Willow flying in midair saying, "I'd like to test that theory."
Yeah.
Jack, tell me about your experience of the first book.
Well, that was also my favorite panel. Willow,
I'm sure we're gonna have overlap on
that
favorite
theory. It was just a great entrance for her, and I love the call back. It was just great fun. Now, I want to start by making an apology of sorts to everyone I've had this conversation with, because I have spoke ill of the comics by saying that the very first panel of the first book of the season 8 opens with Slayers carrying guns, and I would say that as it was a slight against the comic, but upon actually reading it properly, those guns fire grappling hooks. So I was wrong, and I apologize, and I own that.
There are Slayers with guns in this, but it has context and a reason, and I'm fine with it.
Exactly. Yeah. Look, I thought this one was really fun. It was probably my favorite.
Probably my favorite of it. I was very hopeful. A lot of promise.
Yeah. I didn't like the idea of my biggest problem is honestly that the setting. It's just too grand for me.
You like the claustrophobia of Sunnydale. It feels familiar.
Yeah, or just recognizable. That's the thing. There's somewhere that's massive and I don't recognize it. And I have too many questions. How did they get here? Who built this? Who paid for all this stuff? Like what the hell is going on?
Which they get into. I mean, it's a bit of throwaway dialogue in one of those outro stories at the end of the graphic novels, but they do talk about it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, anyway, I love the idea of the skinless Warren coming back. That was something I did know, but I forgot about. So I genuinely gasped when he showed up. Yeah, I thought that was really cool. I liked the dreamscape stuff. That was very interesting and fun. And just,
being in Willow's head was cool.
Yeah. I was caught off guard in Buffy's dream when she kisses Xander and his head pops off. I'm not used to comics, so it took me a little while to understand what was going on there. I'm like, wait, what?
I've read a handful of I used to read comics when I was younger, and I've read a handful of the mainstays over time, your Watchmen and V for Vendetta and so forth. So
right.
I'm definitely more accustomed to the format.
Yeah, and that's something I struggled with throughout the whole comic, was just following the story threads, and I felt like I had to put a lot more effort into trying to understand everything that was going on. And I struggled too with the likenesses aren't always great, and
it's tough, right?
In different panels too. Yeah. And so I'm like, wait, who is this? What? And because it'd be like,
Dawn specifically was the one that I was always like, wait, who's that?
Yes. And I had that problem. Look, Buffy was very obvious. Xander, Giles, a few of them were very, very obvious, but
Willow,
some of them
generally the attire pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
I remember you didn't realize for a whole couple of pages that it was Andrew, and I think I told you I was like, oh, that's Andrew, and you were like, oh,
yeah, exactly. I was so confused. I think that's a me problem, just not really being used to the format and whatnot. I also thought that it was Xander that kissed Buffy to wake her up. I could have sworn it was gonna be Xander, but it wasn't.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, great to see Ethan, and I also liked the retcon stuff with Warren helping Amy with the spell in season 7, the spell where Willow is slowly turning into Warren. I
Yeah,
just thought that
yeah,
was neat. Yeah,
yeah. Because
and yeah,
I hate that episode.
yeah, the episode isn't great.
Having a little more
I don't know.
context for it was.
I like parts of that episode, but that's not what we're here
Yeah,
to
we're not.
discuss.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
anyway, yeah, that's my experience with book 1. That's it. Yeah.
What was your favorite panel? What was your
yeah.
low light of that?
I can see in the script that we more or less feel the same about a few things, but I don't really have any low lights. I had a lot of fun with it, and it's probably my favorite book of the season. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot to. The first book contains The Chain, which has become kind of near and dear to me. So The Chain is a one-off bit that was written by Joss. It's an episodic story about a character that's living in this universe. And a Patreon subscriber asked me to do a recording of it, and that was what had me read it the first time. And that video will be linked down in the description. I did a reading of it, and in the edit of the reading, edited footage of Buffy over the top of it because I thought it, the script for the comic really kind of encapsulated Buffy's journey in a really interesting way. And I really love it. I really love it. It is the most memorable individual issue of the entire season to me. And that is a big highlight of the first graphic novel for me. So yeah, not really any low lights for me.
No,
that
it
one.
it was really good. Yeah.
Boy, it's like a teeter-totter.
It's disappointing, isn't it? It's so disappointing.
Boy, there was so much promise. All right, book 2, No Future for You. Faith and Giles get royal. Buffy and Willow get awkward, and not a lot else happens.
I love that.
What were your highlights from this one, Jack?
I quite liked this one. Well, I loved the Faith assassination subplot. That was really great, and might be my favorite part of the whole season.
It's really good. Yeah.
I loved Faith in this season because she felt most like herself to me. I could imagine Faith doing the things that she did, saying the things that she said, and that where she goes off to kill Genevieve, I think her name is. I could imagine that being in like a Faith spin-off show. Absolutely.
Yeah, so Faith and Giles collaborate because an English woman with Slayer powers is taking other women who have been given Slayer powers off the street and murdering them.
Yeah,
and
right.
Faith gets in with her, and that's the whole setup. And if you hear the parallels between Faith's own arc, I'm sure that's not by accident.
Yeah, right. Yeah. What about you? How did you feel about this one?
Yeah, again, pretty solid. I think that if these first two, so first of all, it's funny. One thing that the season 8 shares in common with some of the early seasons of the show is what about the big bad problem that I have is you set up this arc that kind of calls you through, and then do a whole bunch of little individual itty bitty episodes that have nothing to do with them. You know, the mayor disappears for a big bulk of the first part of season 3, and then the last third of season 3 is kind of a rush to develop all of that towards the end, right? And that happened a lot with this. Twilight's interesting. He can fly, has very super... I like the design of the character. Right. And then just is not around, right? And this whole book, nothing happens with either Warren and Amy or Twilight or any of that. It's just this great little story with Faith and Giles. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed it.
And your favorite panel?
What was your favorite panel?
I see that I didn't put it in the script here, but I do remember what it was. It
You
was
did. Our notes got a little muddled if you want to scroll down a little
yeah.
bit.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, my favorite panel. It's page 46, the entire page where Genevieve gets carried away by the gargoyle-looking creatures. It just looked cool. I don't know. I just thought it looked cool. There was nothing else beyond that. Yeah.
I cheated a little bit with this one. You could pick any of the covers because all the covers are painted. They are beautiful, gorgeous. Beautiful. I kind of want posters, but
I wish the art was closest to the posters.
Well,
but that would have been so much effort.
Yeah, the artist spends a month painting the cover. There's just no way. But the cover with Faith strangling Buffy under the water and sort of the implications of the reflection and the feedback to Buffy's dream in season 3 where Faith is holding her under the water and she's drowning. All of that, I loved the sort of cyclical nature of it. There's a whole bunch of symbols in that image. It was really great. Was there anything else you wanted to mention about that one before we go
on? So I really enjoyed how much effort this one put into tying itself to the show. I liked most of the callbacks to the show. It's fan servicey, and I liked it. Faith being in Cleveland, and we know that Cleveland has a hellmouth. The Mark of Igon tattoo on Giles, and the flashback to Buffy and Faith fighting in season 3. I thought that was very, 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 very cool. I liked that this was also the comic really showing how dark it was willing to go. And it touched
some
on
of the violence was
it touched
a little
on things
shocking.
Like it touched on things that the show just wouldn't dare. Like Wood calls Faith and tells her one of the vamps you used to be a single mom and that she turned her kids and Faith has to go and dust them. Like that was that was dark. And look, I'm a horror fan. I like Tarantino. I like that dark stuff.
And they relate it to if I remember correctly, that bit they relate to Faith's mom, so it has some context. In the whole bit.
Yeah.
Well, I think we both. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. No, I was just going to say that I also really like that we got the little bits of Faith's inner monologue, dialogue, whatever, to tell us her inner workings. I thought that was cool. And I freaking loved the stuff with the mayor, how she has this like fondness. Towards him,
that was the shot of Harry Groner's face. And it said scumbag over the top of it as she was thinking about it, but I loved him or whatever it was. Was in contention for my favorite panel.
It's just so good. Because like, yes, it's twisted and messed up, but of course she would feel some fondness towards the mayor. He was the only one who showed her love at that time. It was a twisted kind of love, but I mean, I personally choose to believe he did love her in his own twisted way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I thought that was so interesting. I loved that. That was really good.
Well, book 3 was Wolves at the Gate, and I think we start to get a hint of the of where things are going. I still enjoyed book 3, so Wolves at the Gate. Buffy shatters the subtext spell. The team makes a trip to Japan, and Xander enlists the help of his favorite master, Bader. I have in my notes here, this is the last kind of one that I would give an unrestrained thumbs up to. The last good one.
Same.
It's not that the rest of it is devoid of things to enjoy, but this is the last one that I unreservedly had a good time with, I think. And I even felt like it dragged a little bit compared to some of the other ones. But it all kind of becomes a blur after this book. And there's a very specific moment, like sort of the pinnacle moment of the comic that for me it was a positive and maybe my only negative about the book. That we're gonna go ahead and spoil, and it's the highlight, probably the highlight of the comic for me.
Yeah, same.
Dramatically.
Same.
So, Xander and one of the Slayers, Renee, have been dating, and Renee gets killed in the book.
Pretty graphically too.
Yes. So at the bottom of the page, Xander turns away, blood hits his face. Turn the page, there's a full page image of her having been staked on the scythe, impaled on Buffy's scythe, which has been stolen in the episode. The episode. It's hard not to say episode when talking about it.
I know, right?
Issue. And so that specifically, and then the following panel where we see her perspective and Xander running at her in slow motion, and her last thoughts on this earth are the writing on the page, was the most significant emotion that I experienced reading the entire comic. Now, there's issues to talk about.
You said you actually shed a tear, right?
I actually teared up reading the that panel and sort of Xander rushing at them and so forth. It fits in the Buffy tradition of never letting the Scoobies be happy ever in a relationship. You know, at some point, I don't know how I feel about that, but killing Renee is that whole thing. But the drama and the cinematic, emotional feeling that evoked did not occur for me in the rest of the book. I had a couple of like the moment of Willow saying I'd like to test that assumption, had that like fist pumpy feeling.
Test that theory.
Test that theory. Yeah. Evoke that fist pumpy feeling that you get a lot on the show. The show has tons of those fist pumpy moments.
Yeah. There's a lot of those.
As you go along. And there are a couple of them in the comic books. But in terms of evoking actual emotion from me, this might have been it.
I agree.
And so I thought it was worth mentioning, and that's it specifically because Buffy the show is so steeped in emotion. You know, I think it's it's one of the biggest hooks for people. Wild at Heart, the end of season 2, you know, over and over and over again. There are these kind of pinnacle emotional Buffy jumping off the tower in season 5, the body, so forth. We are scarred by the show in a way that we oddly treasure. And this did not reach those moments, but it was the only thing that reminded me of those moments. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No.
So yeah, and the panel was very striking, very graphic, very evocative. So certainly the one that I, if not favorite, was the most memorable from that one.
Yeah, I love the way Renee's death is done. It really opened my eyes to what is possible in like the comic medium. I especially loved how the art faded out to show her losing consciousness, dying. Like the way,
pretty cool.
That's just not something I would have thought of. I just think it's a really creative way to tell the story in that panel. Like, really, really creative. And yeah, I was genuinely sad, even though this is just a new character I didn't particularly care for one way or the other.
Yeah, and it kind of highlights a problem I have with events later in the comic, which we'll talk about. Because this shows that it's possible, and I knew that it's possible. I think that that comics can be of an emotionally vital medium in the same way. Because Valerie's letter is an incredibly important bit of writing to me, and that's in V for Vendetta. You know,
right? Yeah.
This is the last thing I'll ever write, and God help me, I'm writing it. These are the last words I'll ever write, and God help me, I'm writing them on toilet paper. You know, those words is the very last inch of us. We must not lose it or ever take it away. Burned in my brain, and I get teared up thinking about that kind of thing. So, it's not a limited medium, but certainly Buffy season 8 didn't take me to those places.
No, not even close. Yeah. So this was one point I was spoiled on, and that's that Buffy sleeps with the woman. And I've seen a lot of complaints about this.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of complaints about this over the years, and I thought it was fine, but I did feel like it just kind of comes out of nowhere. I don't want to say that it was out of character, because a person, even a fictional character, can define their sexuality however the hell they
sure.
want. That's none of my business. But it feels jarring because there's just no setup. I don't know. It just felt like it just happens, and for kind of no reason. But it's
still
fine.
kind of one of the complaints about Willow's portrayal in the show is that the show is guilty of bi erasure. So
and it does in some ways make more sense for her to identify as bi, because she didn't stop liking men. She fell in love with someone who happened to be a woman.
And I think and I apologize for my lack of education here, but I think sort of more broadly we would describe Buffy in this context as queer. As sort of like.
Yeah, or like curious or something.
Somewhere in the gradient, but not one side or the other. But she is still defining herself in the comic as gay or straight, which was the limit. It was a binary thing in the show.
The interesting thing is people can be sexually attracted to a gender, but not romantically attracted. So I know a lot of women who will hook up with another woman, but they will only date men. That's a pretty common thing in my experience. Again, I don't want to speak out of place.
We're coming from an uninformed perspective on this. Just trying to grapple with the comic.
I did love the line, "I can't believe I find it sexy when she calls me ma'am." Like, I genuinely giggled. I had a good little giggle with
it. Went on a little bit too long, but I loved the bit where in the bedroom afterwards, she and Satsu are laying in bed, and a procession of people come in then, which would have been in the show. I could see that scene taking place in the show.
I felt it was a bit too much, though.
It went on too long.
Yeah. That's what you meant. Yeah. It was too much. But something like that would have happened in the show. But it started to feel sort of Bugs Bunny-ish off, like a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And I wonder too, Buffy is such a musical show. And what I mean by that is that there's a music to spoken word. There's a music to dialogue. There's a Shakespeare reads a particular way, but then you get a great actor performing Shakespeare, and it comes alive in a way that is, unless you've read and are very educated in the form and iambic pentameter and all of that, is difficult to hear in your head. I do wonder if some of these scenes would have played better with actors than they read on the page. But I don't know. Whedon, I realize it's hyperbolic to make a Shakespeare comparison, but Whedon does have his own. The show is famous for having its own language, having its own. It coined the term "big bad."
He has a very particular style that's distinct from anything else.
Yeah. Also, this episode, so the Masturbator, we have the return of Dracula. I enjoyed it. And the show sort of went places with his, with the dated vernacular of a 1,000-year-old being that I thought was pretty funny.
It was. You're talking about the casual racism, right?
Which maybe a immortal being who doesn't give a crap would be casually racist.
Yeah, he refers to some Tibetans as filthy yellow swine or something like that. And
Well, I wasn't
that
gonna
shit just
repeat any
wouldn't
of it.
fly today. You know?
Yeah.
Well, sorry. I apologize. I didn't know I was supposed to. This is the family show. I don't know.
Well, you can bleep that if you want to, but Xander does call it out, which I appreciated.
That's the. I think that's the thing that kind of saves it, and also the fact that it does fit for the character. It does.
Yeah, and what they're doing is they're not making that joke. They're bringing Dracula down a peg, right? The joke is not the joke. The joke is that Dracula would speak that way. Like it's
Dracula.
Dracula is the joke in that particular context.
I get that. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think that's the distinction, and that's what makes the humor work for me. And Xander calls it out and all of that. So I don't think that they are. Yeah. The joke is Dracula, not any of the things that he says.
It's not the racism isn't funny. It's sort of poking fun at Dracula for being really, really old school.
Right. And him being inept on So I thought that was fun.
But if this comic was written today, there's no way that helped. There's no way in hell that.
We're going through a pendulum swing right now. We'll see.
But I love Godzilla Dawn too. She was great. And particularly
Mechadon versus Godzilla Dawn.
Yeah. And I like I am a teenage girl. I like blue jeans. And irony. That was a great line. Really
all of his lines were terrific.
Yeah, but overall, I wasn't feeling this one initially, but then I started to have some fun towards the end, kind of.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of setup, a lot of moving pieces. That's the thing is the other books kind of flowed a little bit more. We know Giles, we know Faith. Yeah. We know their interactions. This was setting up like little bads that aren't going to be around, and we still have no idea who Twilight is or what he's doing or any of that. So which kind of brings me to my only low light for the book, which is I have mixed feelings about Renee's death. You've got a fridging issue. They introduced this black woman slayer to kill her. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if that's how that to have a bit of drama and then for Xander to have a moment where he goes and stakes the person who killed her and later scatters her ashes. And I love the mix of symbols there, sort of like slayers become ashes as well. Remember, you are dust, and to dust you shall return.
Don't. That's got chills.
So, like I said, it's. I don't have all negative feelings or all positive feelings about it, but I have a very big mix of, I introducing another character for us to like, just to kill her off so that we can have an emotion feels to me a little. It worked. I had the emotion, but it also felt a little cheap.
It feels like cheating or something. Yeah.
Right, and highlights a big problem later in the book that we'll get into.
Okay, yeah. For me, even though I did start having fun towards the end, everything just devolves into a big fight. It started feeling like an Avengers movie or something. Now, Buffy has fitting. The show. Yeah, the show has a lot of fights in it, but nothing that's like rampaging with giant monsters and stuff.
Well,
what the hell is like?
I mean, it felt like the closest you get it. Yeah, we literally have a giant monster at the end of season 3, a giant snake. So it is in the show, but that's the climax of the entire season itself. Mm-hmm. So, and this is just we're not even at the midpoint yet.
Exactly.
Yeah,
we're about to get to the midpoint.
Yeah, and the midpoint, book 4, Time of Your Life. Yeah. Time gets frayed by a dark friend.
I didn't see that. That's so stupid. I love it.
Yeah, so I'm not even going to look at my notes for this one because I don't know how this works if you haven't read the Frey graphic novel. I've read the Frey
Which I
graphic novel.
hadn't.
You haven't.
My notes here were 2 lines. That's it.
Yeah. So Dark Willow, hundreds, thousands of years. I don't know how long it is in the future. Deep in the future, flying cars, Fifth Element into the future. Brings Buffy into the future. All but one Slayer is dead, and there's some setup to explain even that. And which is interesting, right? Because it means that Buffy failed. The future she's trying to create with all of the empowered Slayers no longer exists. So what happened? It's a really interesting setup. The problem is that the world makes zero sense if you have not read Frey, the comic book.
That's exactly right.
And that issue raises its head again later on down the line, once we start seeing Spike. But we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay. So I read Frey, but even so, having read Frey, this felt a little inconsequential to me. Most of it was spent with Buffy trying to figure out how this universe works, which did nothing to explain to the reader how the universe works, because it's all just done in little bits of exposition that you can easily space out for. And then you meet Dark Willow, and you get the sense that something happened, but we don't get to find out what it was. And that story, like Person of Interest, sounds way more interesting than the story we've spent this entire time focusing on. I don't want to know about,
man.
Like Frey and all of that. Fine, I'll go read the Frey comic book. I want to know what happened to Dark Willow and all of the Slayers. And it does not bother with that. And Buffy goes back to normal time, and then we get the one-off episode at the end of that novel.
I forgot about it until now, to be honest. Like, it's that, I wasn't feeling this one. I guess it kind of picked up towards the end, but I was just confused most of the time and didn't really get it. It definitely does a very intentional red herring. I believe it intentionally wants you, or tries to make you think that the villain is Drusilla, and then it ends up being Dark Willow. And as much as I love Dark Willow, I'm actually sad that we didn't get to see Drew and all, because
Drew would have been interesting.
I feel Drew was underused in the show, and now she's underused. Well, not used at all here. So I was a little bummed, but yeah, honestly, I don't have much to say. Like I said, my notes were 2 lines.
I love Dark Willow's dress.
We
don't find out how Willow went dark.
Yeah.
And I mean,
we don't.
Maybe that's in future seasons 9,
maybe
10.
Yeah,
I don't want to say, but it doesn't really make season 8 better and this particular graphic novel better.
No, and it feels like a detour just to drag it out. I don't know.
It felt to me like a tour of a different story. Like Frey is its own comic book, and it's interesting, and the world that it sets up is very science fiction focused, and I liked what it did. And this is a tour of that doesn't really do a bunch for Buffy's story in season 8. You know?
Right.
So, yeah, I felt like book 4 wasn't bad. It was, which there are bad ones coming, but more irrelevant to me. It felt like a detour, an uninteresting detour that didn't show the best parts of the things that it was detouring into anyway.
Right, yeah.
And didn't set them up enough in a way that didn't require me to go out and buy the Frey comic book. I mean, agreed?
Yeah, and yeah, my favorite panel was Willow getting on with a goddess snake woman. I just think that was pretty. The art was really pretty.
And I did like, there's a Willow one-off somewhere in here that explains all of the goddess snake woman stuff, and I actually really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Um,
And my low lights were just kind of all of it because I haven't read the Frey comic, and so it just kind of came out of nowhere and felt weird. But what about you, Ian? What were your
uh, it's interesting. The one-off story at the end, the comic style reverts into like a 1950s. Buffy wakes up and she's going to school at Sunnydale. She's in high school again. It's the first 2-season Buffy.
Okay, yep.
And I think I didn't really know the artist that they were homaging. I believe an artist died, and so Buffy is slaying a demon and ends up back in time for a season, sort of learning a lesson or whatever. And it did a good job of evoking those early seasons of the show, and I felt what you were describing your issue was early on with the comic, which is like you liked the familiarity of Sunnydale.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons people love high school or love the high school stories is the repetition is very familiar. It's very much a warm blanket kind of situation. And I felt that in this little one-off comic, but I didn't know who they were homaging. And honestly, where the comic goes after that, evoking the sort of like grounded, familiar, comfortable, warm stories when you're about to just fly off the handle and become bizarre was maybe not the best. So that
No.
I had that as my low light.
Okay, yeah.
Book 5,
Absolutely.
Predators and Prey. My movie tagline. Wait, Harmony, everyone knows? That's it with the Rogue Slayers? Did we trip over a shark back there?
Oh, we didn't trip over a shark. We crashed straight into that.
So Harmony becomes a reality TV star, and now everyone in the world knows about vampires?
Yep, that's what happened.
And the B story is Giles and Faith, again, in some other country, whatever was the best part of the whole thing. Jack, what do you think of this one?
Look, normally I'm a big fan of silliness and a big fan of the lulls, but this one was way too silly for me. But in saying that, I laughed a lot, but I just don't think I laughed for the right reasons.
Well, that's interesting. It may have been trying to do a band candy or a Zeppo-y kind of story, but that whole like departure of tone, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what was going on here, but
I don't know either.
I wanted to love it. Jane Espenson's one of the writers in this one. She wrote, I would say, behind Joss, Jane wrote the most number of my favorite episodes of Buffy.
Right. Okay.
You know, I mean, Joss writes and gets all the budget for the big swingers, so it's not a fair comparison. But just looking at the raw number of Jane Espenson's episodes, I think she has the greatest proportion of ones that I love the most. And I could feel her flavor here and there in these stories, but I didn't get it, right? Because there's a conceit in Buffy that the adults don't know that the world is full of vampires.
Yeah, and that's, I don't know, I feel like that's important. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that
keeps the world intact.
That is well, what it does is for the viewer, it makes the viewer feel like it's possible that they're living in this world, right?
Yeah, it makes it feel like the real world. Yeah.
I think that's an important part of this kind of fantasy. I'm sure there's a term for that, right? It makes something to make the viewer feel relatable. Like they can control the force, right? Or whatever that if that Hagrid is going to come along and let them know that they can go to Hogwarts, right? But all of the Muggles, none of the Muggles know that Hogwarts exists, and they must never know. It's that conceit that makes that fantasy world feel possible to that they're living in that world. And that's one of the things that sells the magic of that story. It's one of the fun, you know, it's a contrivance. It's a, it's a mechanism. It's a cheat almost, but it's one that I like. Right? It's one that makes the world feel more real and accessible to me. And to suddenly have Harmony biting people on a reality television show on MTV just makes it all impossible.
No one would go for that. No one would. I don't know. Like that wouldn't be. That just wouldn't fly, man. It just wouldn't.
Yeah, it just is. It just. And then they have to fight a battle against stuffed animals, and I like the design of the stuffed animals.
I forgot about
that. And some of the jokes were funny. Like, actually, the bits where the stuffed animals get in people's mouths and turn them into zombies, I thought was...
Yeah, that was fun.
It's kind of sufficiently horror-like. But it just starts to go off the rails, man. It starts to get a little, like... The rules of the world start to break down, and it does not stop.
And like I said, it just gets too silly. It's too much.
Yeah.
It's not even tongue in cheek. It's like biting your tongue off. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to be too negative, and we have a lot more negative to go. Is there anything else specifically you want to call out on this one?
Well, there was good stuff away from the Harmony thing, like
Faith and Giles,
Faith and Giles, and I loved the bit where Buffy and Andrew go to rescue Nisha from the spider demon.
Yeah, so we get the setup for the Rogue Slayers in the first graphic novel, and then they disappear, and then they're just resolved right here, and that's it.
Yeah. But I love how afterwards they're talking, and Andrew says how he'd finally gained Buffy's trust, and he didn't want to lose it. I actually felt some things there, not as much as Renee and all that, but I felt something. I really enjoyed the Giles and Fate stuff. It felt very horror-esque. It felt like Transylvanian. Frankenstein-y kind of horror.
They get another kind of single story.
Yeah. And once again, Faith is the character that feels most like herself to me, and I've enjoyed all of her appearance so far. And yeah, my favorite panel is the very last one with Faith and Giles, where she tells the townspeople to aim for the heart. I just thought it was a cool panel.
All right, on to book 6, Retreat. My movie tagline. Actually, I think we fell over 10 sharks, and a yak, and a wild Oz appears, and now there's a submarine.
For some reason, there's a submarine.
The movie taglines are getting as confused as I am. It just goes off the rails. Jack, granted, Twilight's back, and there's like a war between the soldiers and the Slayers, and they go to Tibet, and there's Oz and magic and something, and Buffy ends by flying. Yay! What do you think of the book 6?
Well, look, there's actually quite a bit I did like, but I don't know. There's little bits I did like for example, Faith and Giles hiding in a bunker under Berlin. The history buff in me kind of liked that.
Yeah.
I liked Andrew and Warren reuniting, but I was confused at the same time, because Warren says he wants to patch things up, and Andrew says Warren made him a killer, and then Warren says something like, I really thought if you killed Jonathan, we would live as gods. Wasn't that the first pretending to be?
It was the first pretending to be. Yeah.
So, I don't know. Did they just forget? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just... And I found myself saying the same thing that Andrew said when Buffy says, everyone head to the submarine. I was like, they have a submarine?
They have a submarine?
Why?
Because submarines are awesome. I mean, in fairness, you could make the same argument. It's not really the problem to me. It feels like a problem because the story's falling apart. right?
Yeah. Okay.
Buffy
Okay.
pulls
Yeah.
out a rocket launcher at the end of season 2. That's the claustrophobic Sunnydale version of a submarine, right? If the story were working, but it's one of those fist pumpy moments we were talking about
Mhm.
in season 2 because it's been set up. Xander had the
Mhm.
army thing, so on and so forth. So we see the rocket launcher, we're amazed. We're like, oh, hell yeah, I can't believe the show's going there. That's awesome. But that's because the season 2 story flows. This story is just gonzo, bizarre. Like there's
Yeah.
so many so many notes and so many different things going on, and it just becomes
It's
so all over the place that you get to a submarine and it just feels random. A rocket
yeah.
launcher
Yeah.
doesn't
It
feel random.
no, but I mean, yeah. There's a rocket launcher in the show. It just feels so over the top, and it feels so divorced from the show.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
it's like fair enough. They have all this high tech gear in Scotland and a high tech base and everything, but like also a submarine. It just it it really crossed the line into ridiculousness for me. I did love that we got to see Oz, and I think a lot of people would say that the character cameos are fan servicey, and maybe they are, but I still like them. But honestly, as much as I love that we see Oz, overall I didn't really like what they ended up doing with him.
Yeah.
Like he's
It
just
goes
kind of
nowhere.
yeah, it goes nowhere. That's the thing. It's not that it was bad. It just didn't go anywhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, it's
very
like
very
cool. So
confusing.
why does this matter?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
they
Like
find an
cool. There's
interesting
Oz. But
yeah, they
yeah.
find an interesting reason to bring Oz back for
Mm.
the needs of the story. And then it just finds out that that reason was nonsense and
Mhm.
it just goes nowhere.
Yeah.
My favorite panel, the one-off story, has a doll Dawn. I thought it was a pretty cool illustration. What about
Yeah.
yours?
The reveal of the goddesses, I thought that was
Oh
pretty
yeah,
cool.
yeah, that's Brad.
Yeah.
Lowlights, I didn't write anything because pretty
Yeah.
much my review of the book is lowlight.
One last thing I did want to mention, Thad, and I did like. I love the conversation with Xander and Dawn, where I think Xander says humans point to the danger, not the safe, and Dawn says maybe we should point to the safe sometimes. I love that line so much.
Yeah.
That was nice.
Here's the thing I want
But
to I
yeah,
want to emphasize is like none of there wasn't a point in the comic anywhere where I felt like it was universally bad. Like there was always something there. Every other page there was some droplet of something I liked or appreciated or something like
true.
that.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it just was. I mean, maybe the last book gets into that universal bad space for me, but up through book 6, you know, I was still like, more of that, please. And then instead, they'd
yeah,
have giant, huge battles between
yeah,
gods.
yeah. The low light for me was really just that this was the part where I basically just checked out.
Yeah, yeah. This is where you hit the wall, and I kept having to check in and be like, "Hey, have you read the comic? Hey, have you read the comic?" I get it.
Yeah, seriously, I was stuck for a couple of weeks after this. It just,
Yeah.
whew, yeah.
Uh. All right. So, book 7, Twilight, and that's where I went. Get it? Twilight, like the. That's got to be. Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. Angel and Buffy bang the Matrix loading program into existence while everyone waits for them to be done. That's the whole comic. Nailed it. So in the book 6 ends with Buffy realizing she can fly. The beginning of book 7 opens with her and Andrew trying to figure out how her superpowers work. That's a lot of fun. Andrew, of course, runs her through speeding bullets and all of the conventional, comic booky kinds of things. And later in the book, you come to find out that she's gaining power because the potentials she created, the women she gave Slayer powers to, are dying. and their power is accumulating in her. And I thought that was dark in a way that is interesting.
Yeah. I
Um,
see. I didn't have the same ethical problem that. Well, I didn't have the ethical problem that the comic wanted me to have, because my thought was they're dead, and Buffy was doing this automatically. It wasn't an act that she was doing. So
yeah, but
I don't
killing
know.
all of them so that their powers accumulated in her was Twilight's plan.
Oh, okay. See, I. Whoosh.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
you're not alone. My favorite panel was Super Nerd Andrew. Andrew comes out wearing the garb that makes him look like the kind of tropey character that he actually is. Just a conflagration of or a gathering. He's wearing cap, shield, and like a Wolverine shirt and all of that. But it was cute. I liked it.
My favorite panel, I guess, when Buffy and Angel shooting to space, I thought it looked cool. Again, I just liked it, but everything else about that whole bit, okay, hang on. Let's talk about.
I mean, I summarized it. They banged another universe into existence.
Yeah.
What else do you want from me, Jack?
I'm sorry. Look, okay, let me just go over this quickly. I don't buy Buffy being in love with Xander. Not in a million years. She wouldn't fall for Xander. She just wouldn't. I had the same reaction that Xander did, really. Don't buy it. Wouldn't happen. No. And look, now Buffy is flying around and fighting goddesses like she's freaking Superman. Like, this isn't jumping the shark. This is flying over the shark. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, the MCU has like the Avengers and Earth's Mightiest Heroes and Iron Man stories and all of that. But the MCU also has their cosmic stories: the Silver Surfer, Thor, Galactus, all of that.
Yeah.
I think that this was the attempt to elevate, and likewise, DC has Batman and then Superman and the cosmic stories.
Yeah.
I think this was Whedon trying to elevate into the cosmic space with Buffy, and good gravy, it didn't work.
No, like I've got here like referring to the sex scene. I'm like, what in the hell is happening in capital letters? Like, that sex scene is awful, and like Buffy and Angel boning is like seemed like it was ending the world, but it was really birthing another one, and like, what the hell?
Also, there's a weird part of me that feels like I have these characters mean something to me. They I'm treasured stories. You feel like there's a part of you that emotionally relates to these fictional characters as though they're real, and I'm not saying that's healthy.
Yeah,
but I'm saying, like,
it's true though. It's very true.
Yeah, when Chidi and what's her name in The Good Place say goodbye, Eleanor, like, they're like people I know. I experience emotions the way that people I know. So big spreads of these two naked and banging with,
and some of those panels are graphic, like his head's between her legs and stuff.
Feels a little like it feels like I don't want to know. Like, I don't want to go here with these. Yeah, let them have their private life. I'm fine with that. It's not that I'm anti that. It's just like I don't want.
I'm not anti that at all. But for some reason, it just felt weird here. It felt so weird.
I have best friends I've known my entire life. I don't want to be in their bedrooms. Like, I don't want a camera in the bedrooms.
Yeah.
And I don't know that it was necessary to tell the story. The other thing too that I want to acknowledge is, like, Whedon is Whedon, so everything is incredibly theme driven. Even Ultron is shooting for a theme. There's a theme that was supposed to be going on there. I'm sure that, and I'm supposed to be the theme guy. Like, I'm supposed to be the guy who's just like, oh, but this is about the essence of the universe. Problem is, you got to have a story. You got to keep me emotionally invested. Like, you can't have the theme lead the horse.
Right.
And that's, boy, is that what felt like is going on here. Because when you do that, I just don't care. I don't care to figure out what the symbols mean and the metaphors and all of that, because you haven't invested me emotionally in the story.
And I don't know how long that sex scene went for, but it felt like it went forever. It just couldn't stop. But hang on, let me sort of rewind a little bit. The reveal that Twilight is Angel, I was like, I don't know how to describe what I was feeling. It was a weird like mixture of disappointment, shock, and like, what the actual bleep? Like, what?
No.
Angel wouldn't do that. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't. Joss Whedon could look me in the eyes and say yes, he would, and I would say no, he wouldn't.
Yeah,
just wouldn't do it.
Yeah,
he wouldn't do it. Also,
yeah, and I mean that's something that the handful of times the show has made that mistake, they stand out. Like Cordelia at the end of season 4 being it feels like, but it feels right. I know, and agreeing to turn into an angel and leave Earth and leave all our friends behind. Cordy wouldn't do that.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And then the line he says, "It's not just that we get to be together, but Buffy, we finally get to be happy." And Jealous is back. Like,
right.
Come on.
Yeah.
What are you trying to do? And not even my man Spike showing up can save these because he shows up in a spaceship piloted by bugs.
Also, Also, we kind of throw the cookie dough idea out the window here, where it's like she turned him down. You know, I'm cookie dough. I'm not done baking yet.
She's in love with him. She literally tells Angel that he's like the love of her life or something like that.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, and then and then as if things weren't really off the rails, as everyone's dying to Cthulhu monsters, and they're in the Matrix loading room that can be anything, and they could have done a thing about like if nothing we do matters, all that matters is what we do. Like if we can scope the universe to be whatever we want, then there's no meaning to it. Like they don't go there, and I'm sure maybe that was related or whatever, and none of that was set up by what they went through up to that point. There were so many opportunities there.
Right. And speaking for myself here, it was so convoluted that I actually struggled to understand what
was happening. Yeah, I did too.
Yeah.
Well, and then Spike shows up in a spaceship piloted by bugs, which no doubt there was so you had to read the Frey comic to understand that section. This angel is the angel that is at the end of After the Fall, then turns into the Twilight that comes to this story. And Spike has his own set of stories.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
The bit with the dog at the start of the next
I think so.
Angel's talking to a dog at the Hollywood sign. Or
and Spike has his own set of stories that have him end up in the spaceship piloted by bugs.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Right.
But given where we started to now, I just like I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah, I completely checked out, and I just wanted to finish it at this point. I just wanted to finish it.
Yeah. And even still they were having little bits and bobs here and there that I was like, oh, I like that. You know, when Spike and Buffy are talking and reconnecting, I was like, that was cute. There's some of the bit that I treasure, that I love.
Yeah. One thing I did
I love your notes. Twilight is Angel? What the hell is happening?
Yeah, this was my stream of consciousness at the time. And then I've got Lindsay Ellis thanks I hate it gift. That was me at the end. I'm like, no, I hated it.
For lowlights, I just had the whole thing.
Me, it was really just the reveal that Twilight is Angel. It's just so stupid, and the convoluted attempt at explaining it just made it worse for me. I would have preferred if they just didn't explain it, because I don't know. Yeah. One thing I did want to call out though. So there is this bit where in part 2 there are these bubbles in the panels that explain whom the characters are with a short description. And Faith's one says that she's slutty for attention. I really didn't like that. Faith is very sexual, but it's not for attention. I don't know. That just bugged me and rubbed me the wrong way.
Well, yeah, I think that it's shown that a lot of Faith's outward sexuality is driven by trauma. Is the story that they show in season 3. Mm-hmm. If she's self-applying, I don't know one way or the other, but yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Anyway,
yeah. Book 8, Last Gleaming. Let's bring this into the landing.
Let's do it.
Summary tagline, movie poster tagline. Didn't read the Spike comics or Frey or Angel After the Fall? You're gonna have a bad time. I said highlights. In general, anytime the book allows a moment for the characters to interact and ignore this batshit plot, we feel reverberations of things that we care about and are invested in again. The rest of the time,
I'd agree with that.
There's a flying egg and bugs flying it, and what the hell is happening? Also, I said some of the Cthulian monsters were interesting. And they're evoking a particular heavy metal art style that I used to enjoy. Favorite panel, the last one, whatever it was. I didn't even bother looking it up.
I just saw that. Again, I went into this just like, what the hell is happening? Like, Giles recognized Angel's voice, but then oh no, sorry. Spike knew Twilight was Angel. Giles recognized his voice in the last issue, but then Faith didn't recognize it. I don't know, very very confusing. But I'm very confused here how Spike knew it was Angel. Like, was that in the in the fray or?
I don't know. No.
Okay.
Frey has nothing to do with any of this nonsense.
Okay, and then we get an appearance from the Master, and this was the point where I was like, wow, they really are just cramming as many character cameos in as humanly possible.
There was no reason for the Master to be here. I think they were trying to do like some sort of cyclical symmetry, but it didn't work.
But then we get that bit where it implies that the Master looks the way he does because of their seed, but if I'm not mistaken, the show explains at least twice that the older a vampire gets, the more their demon side shows.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's explained with both the Master and Kiss Toast. So Kissing Toast.
Kissing Toast.
And yeah, so like, come on, dude. Like, you realize the only people that are gonna read this are fans of the show. Like, come on. I guess I did like that they went back to Sunnydale. That was cool. But holy shit, they killed Giles. What the hell?
And I felt nothing.
I wanted to care. I wanted to care.
That was kind of the Giles' neck breaking was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for me in this one. So to have Angel kill Giles, which is strangely evocative of Cordelia in season 4 being the bad guy, which I thought didn't work either for similar reasons, because it's character breaking, and Cordy wouldn't do that, and Angel wouldn't do that, and then to have it mean nothing, because we immediately devolve into her shattering an egg and cut to later on, and we don't get a chance to grieve. You don't feel any weight.
No.
From one of the most significant characters in the series dying.
I did love though that Giles left Buffy the Vampire book in his will.
I loved the follow-up after that, but none of that. Giles and Buffy don't really have a relationship in the season. They don't talk. Faith should have been the one who reacted to his death, because Faith and he had the established relationship in the story. And we know that the comic can evoke emotion, because Renee's death, a character we just met, that we've just developed, we don't have 7 seasons of grounded, bonded connection to. I felt something when she died. It was a beautiful, painful, poignant moment. And Giles's death meant nothing.
Nothing. I did like, the thing I loved about the book, though, was it served as a pun, but a bookend to Buffy and Giles, because that book, he shows her in their first scene together in the show, the very first scene.
Yeah, I loved the use of the vampire book.
Yeah. And then so to end it with that I really enjoyed that. But
yeah, I love symmetry.
Everything you just said, I second everything you just said.
But symmetry is a wonderful structural. I try and have symmetry in every episode guide. You know, the intro, something in the intro will be in the conclusion, or something in the first 5 minutes of the video will be in the conclusion. I'm going to reference back because I love that sense of completion and closure and all of that. That we sort of naturally feel when symmetry, but symmetry is not substance. Symmetry does not. Symmetry is a structural design. It's not the substance of it. It's a framework. And having the master there was just symmetry with no substance. Having, the vampire book. That moment lands because of the 7 seasons, not because of anything to do with.
Exactly.
It
didn't make me feel like Giles's death was any more weighty than it was. It was just something I literally thought to myself, oh, that's cute. I like that. But
I did not see the last Star Wars movie, but it's been a criticism leveraged against the latest Star Wars trilogy is in Star Wars A New Hope, Chewbacca doesn't get a medal. At the end of the thing, when they walk down the thing and and they're all standing on the thing, and then cut to credits.
Yeah.
Everyone gets a medal except for Chewbacca. And so at the end of the new trilogy, for no reason out of nowhere, not The Last Jedi, that's whatever the last one was.
Rise of Skywalker.
Rise of Skywalker. Out of nowhere, at the end of the movie, someone hands Chewie a medal, and he holds it. So Chewie now has the medal.
I saw it, and I don't even remember.
I didn't see Rise of Skywalker, but I'm so sick of Star Wars discourse. But that is
me too.
That is symmetry without substance. That's fan service, meaningless fan service. Like I like meaningful fan service, but meaningless fan service.
Fan service.
Yeah, go ahead.
Fan service gets a bad rap, and I don't think it always deserves.
Yeah, I like fan service.
Bad thing.
100%. Arguably bringing Q back every time was fan service because Q's a fan favorite.
Yeah.
Once the fans like something, bringing that character back is fan service.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I did like that Faith was the one who was forgiving towards Angel and she wants to help him. It's a nice callback to 5x5 and Sanctuary, I thought. But again, it's just
you're just calling back things
far.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it had fallen so far off a cliff this time, I still didn't care all that much. This was me basically picking at things that I liked just so I didn't sit here and shit on it, which I've inadvertently done anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hate being super negative, but I mean, just being honest,
spade, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We can't sit here and bullshit and say that we liked it when we didn't. But yeah, I also just kind of like that it ends with "Let's go to work." It's cheesy, but
again like referential,
and that's and that's my favorite panel, I guess. Yeah.
Here's another thing that we didn't acknowledge is that the time between I didn't look it up exactly, but the time between the first episode of season 8, first comic of season 8, and the last one, years have passed. These are written.
What?
These are it's like 6 or 7 years between the beginning of season 8 and the end of season 8 in terms of the actual time it took them to write and draw and do the entire thing.
Jeez.
Yeah, and
Wow.
I think that you feel it. I think that it
Mm.
starts tight and interesting and well done,
Yeah, and then it gets disjointed.
and
You
just
just can't
blurs
connect it.
over the course of years. And one of the
Mm.
things that Whedon said in that note that I opened this discussion by reading is that the future seasons are going to be shorter, more concise, more specific, more targeted. And I
Mhm.
do hear that all of the seasons improve from
I've heard that
this one
too. Yeah.
going forward. And
Mhm.
honestly, I said I enjoyed the first three books. The fourth one was okay, and then it goes off the
Mhm.
rail. So I enjoyed half the season and I didn't. So I'd still
Same.
say, yeah, I had a good time. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
the last book was a grind, but if we're the law of
Mhm.
averages, or we're just do the math there, I enjoyed
Mhm.
more than I didn't. And so would I read another one
Yeah.
of these? Sure, I'll probably read future seasons.
Yeah. For me, I'm not gonna lie. I don't feel like I'm chomping at the bit to read more, but maybe I will if we wanted to do season 9. I'd be down for that. I'm not saying that I don't want to, but I'm not necessarily I want to either.
Well,
um,
if we still have any listeners left, anyone who's listening or
yeah.
watching this, do you want us to
If
talk
you want
about
it,
season 9? Let us know
let
down in
us
the
know
comments
because
down below.
we will do it. But overall, I had more fun with this than and I would. I
Yeah.
really thought I wasn't gonna like it, and but I don't know. I was about to say I wanted to say that I enjoyed more than I didn't, but I feel like it's a 50-50 split. Like it's straight down the
Well,
middle
the interesting thing
for
is
me.
that because they leave Twilight on the shelf until the last third, it's actually
Mm.
more of a Buffy anthology.
Okay. Yep.
It's an anthology of stories. There's a story about Buffy or Faith and Giles. There's a story about Buffy having to save Willow from um, Amy and what's his name? Warren.
Warren.
Uh, because there's not, the circumstances of all of the characters is consistent, but
Hmm.
they're really until the last third telling individual stories, right? It is episodic. It's a little more episodic than it is in arc season 8. Certainly it's not as
Hmm.
arcy as Buffy season 6 or even season 7. It has
Right.
it's many more self-contained stories with a dribble of and here's a panel with Twilight in it, you know.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that, it's more like a season of Star Trek in that sense. Star Trek The Next Generation is a very episodic show where, you know, do I enjoy Star Trek season 6? I don't know, but there are a lot of good individual episodic
Yeah.
stories in
Absolutely.
there.
Absolutely.
Measuring season
Yeah.
6 is less relevant than it is in Star Trek than it is in an arc show, and I
Yeah.
feel like this is more like
Yeah.
that. So on the whole, yeah,
Yeah.
I enjoyed more of it than I didn't, and because it's so
Mhm.
episodic, that's fine.
I think for me, it's just I didn't feel all that invested in the main plot. I enjoyed the
Yeah,
subplots more than the main.
yeah.
The
It's
main
more
just
like
it
so
felt.
it's more of a Buffy season 4 for me in that case because
Mm,
wow the arc
mm,
blah, but season
yeah.
4 contains something blue, Hush, there's lots of good
Yeah,
stuff
there's a
in
lot of
season
good
4.
parts in it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, Ultimately,
Hangs.
I don't like how it wrapped up. With Buffy destroying magic and ending the Slayer lineage. For me, that alters the universe too much, and it's no longer the universe the show was set in. Like the world is completely different now, and that was also that it wasn't just destroying their seed; it's the harmony stuff with the vampires and all that. I get that,
Yeah.
but I just felt taking away magic just takes so much from the setting and the universe and the world. And I know that going by, the letter from Joss Whedon, that they did that to bring it back to a more intimate feel, like a more intimate setting. But it
you didn't need to do
much
that
for me.
Yeah,
it did exactly. It could have been done another way. You didn't have to
that's
do
it.
that.
That's a contrived choice. You could have written anything. It's like a lot of people complain about the end of the Mass Effect trilogy. Mass Effect is supposedly all about characters and choice, and it ends with you having to make a decision about whether or not you're going to destroy all biological life in the universe or whether or not you're going to destroy all technological life in the universe. Right. So robots, androids, all of that. And that's a dumb, contrived choice.
Yeah.
You know, and then if you play enough of Mass Effect 3 and get a high enough completion percentage, you unlock a third choice, which is to combine all technological and biological life in the universe, which is also dumb. I don't want to be half biological, half android. That sounds terrible to me. You know, and that was not the story. Just because the last third of the story ended up there doesn't mean that the last third of the story couldn't have been written differently.
Right. It, to me, ultimately, it felt like the writers using a katana to cut up an onion. Like, why?
Yeah. So that's Buffy season 8, everyone.
I'm glad we did it. I'm really glad that we did it.
We definitely did it. It was something. And here's the thing. Either way, I'm happy going forward that whenever someone asks me about the comics, I can say, well, I read Buffy season 8.
Yeah. And look, if you love season 8, I'm sorry. Okay. I'm so sorry.
Here's the thing. The chain is in it. I love the chain. You can listen to the reading down in the podcast description. There's lots of good stuff. If you have more of a taste for comics than we do, maybe
I think that might have been part of my struggle. Is just I don't have a lot of experience with comics. This was literally the most I've ever read of a comic. So
and I think we were both saying that even though we are not comic book steeped people, we still enjoyed it. I'm in general until the last 2 books specifically. So well, that's enough of that. But I am missing my prop that I was going to
Where did it go?
Oh, here we go. All right. So this podcast used to be just me talking about productivity and all of that stuff, and it's way better now. But one of the things that I introduced when it was just little old me was a weekly weekly reading chapter from a fanfic. And I kind of enjoyed that, and we ran out of fanfic, but Jack and I talked about it and decided that didn't really fit within the format of the podcast the way it is now. And, sort of just going online and getting other people's fanfics and reading them, I never actually found the person who wrote the other fanfic.
Exactly. And it's entirely possible that someone could come out of the woodwork and say, hey, I'm not comfortable with you reproducing my work.
There's a lot of editing.
Would be within their right to do
100%. But I still enjoyed that sort of foray into those kinds of stories and that other kind of thing. So the other day, Jack and I were Googling around Amazon. We were searching Amazon for something. I don't remember what it was. Yeah. And I realized that there is a wealth of Buffy books, mostly young adult novels. Available from all over the lore and the arc, available on Amazon.
Some of them are in between like seasons of the show and stuff like that.
Yes. And so we did 5 minutes worth of research and decided to that for a little while we want to try a book club here on the podcast. So next podcast we're going to be talking about, well, here I have The blur effect is blurring it. So we have no idea where to start. So
Yeah.
I spent
And this will be in the second segment of the next
second
podcast.
segment of the next. This is not the feature of the next podcast. Second segment of the next podcast. We want to have a little baby discussion about one of the Buffy books. So we picked out Coyote Moon. I don't know. Coyote Moon by John Vornholt. Now we're going to include, if you want to read along with us, and to join in the discussion by way of the comments section in the next episode, we're going to include links in the description to. I bought the physical. This is a reprint of some of the book. Came out during the show when it was airing, and this is a reprint from 5 or 10 years ago. That is an anthology print of 3 of those books. So I don't know how to Buffy. It's just Buffy the Vampire Slayer 1. This one contains Coyote Moon, Night of the Living rerun, and Portal Through Time. Jack, you're going to be reading from the Kindle version.
I am, yeah.
To start with, we're going to provide links to both down in the description. But we just thought it would be fun. A way of changing things up.
And we're expecting it to be silly fun too. Nothing too serious.
2 middle-aged guys reading young adult fiction about Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
What could go wrong?
We know what we're about, fam. Here on this podcast.
We're not above anything here. Yeah. We're not above anything.
What's so funny is that Jack and I were making our notes for this discussion, and I opened the book and started laughing because I forgot how big the print is and how double spaced the pages are in young adult books. It's pretty fun. So the first book,
I made the comment that it was like a Goosebumps book.
It's very similar. So Coyote Moon, we're gonna try and not go 2 or 3 months between now and the next podcast. But
it is us. So.
Neither of us is getting married that we know of between now and then. So it should be a little easier to not do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to split the book over the next 2 podcasts. So for the next podcast, if you want to read along with us, it's the next 5 chapters of Coyote Moon by John Vornholt.
And
I'm excited.
It'll be down in the description.
Yeah.
Yes, me too. I'm expecting this just to be silly and fun, and I'm excited for that.
I'm interested to see. We've read the one of the comics. Now we'll read one of the books. I think these books are official. I mean, they at least have the rights to the show.
Yeah,
because these are these are endorsed. I don't know if they're not endorsed by Joss, but they're official books. So I used to read Star Trek books when they were airing. So what the heck?
And there is a ton of Star Trek books.
Ton of Star Trek books, including ones written by
and Star Wars as well.
Yeah, and I do believe I may be wrong about this, but I believe James Marsters either wrote a Spike book or
I've got it. Yeah. It's a very short graphic novel that he wrote. I've got it. It's not bad. It's just very, very short. But I bought it because I wanted him to sign it when I met him at a convention a couple of years back. So I've got it's called Into the Light. If anyone's interested,
I believe
also published by Dark Horse.
I think Shatner wrote one of the Star Trek books. I think So it's a thing, and I'm interested to dive into it.
Absolutely.
All right, so before we roll the topic of the next episode, this week, this Saturday, November 12th, Jack, what are we doing?
Yep. We're doing, we're delving into Firefly, Ian. We've put the Buffy / Angel Patron Hangouts on pause for a little bit, and we're going to dive into Firefly. So we'll be getting together on a live stream to watch episode 1 of Firefly, whatever it's called. Serenity. Okay.
Yeah.
And then after that, we'll be jumping into another live stream with patrons to discuss the episode. It's all free to watch on YouTube if that's your thing. Come on over.
And if you'd care to join into the discussion with us, there's a link to Patreon. It's the $5 and up tier on Patreon. All right, let's roll the new topic. And while I'm getting this ready, excited. You want to tell people how this works?
We have a selection of mostly TV shows at this point, but I think there's a couple of films in there and whatnot. And some submitted by our fans, and we randomly roll for what we delve into next on the next main segment of the next episode of the show.
Yeah, so, perfect.
Yeah. I didn't explain that very well, but there it is.
Yeah. So the list now is up to over 20 things. I love it. I love the idea. This is why the podcast stopped before, is you and I had to generate whatever the topic was from scratch. And we'd always do it every week
on the spot too.
Yeah,
on the day.
The day of. Yeah. This backlog, and we do kind of limit it to stuff that we have a cursory interest in, because if I'm not interested in something, I don't want to spend 90 minutes, 2 hours just being negative.
Exactly.
I love loving things.
So it is curated. However, we will take some submissions from viewers.
Yeah. So if you have something you think we'd enjoy, toss it in the comments.
But the only caveat there is you have to be open to honest opinions on
Yes.
Yeah.
Just like this Buffy season 8 conversation. I feel like that's about as honest as we get. All right. Next week, we are going to be talking about Fleabag.
Yes! Oh my god, yes, I'm so happy. That's what I was hoping for. I freaking love Fleabag.
Sweet. Yeah, I love Fleabag as well. And it'll be nice to revisit. Fleabag is a show on Amazon Prime. I'm not prepared to provide any other information about it. It's like 6 half-hour episodes, and it's 2 seasons long, and it is marvelous. So if you want to watch it in advance, big recommendation, and we'll be talking about it next week.
I don't know how to describe it, but it's amazing. It's very meta.
It's a story about a woman who runs a coffee shop.
There it is.
And there's a lot of sex.
But it is truly amazing and heartfelt and wonderful, and I'm so glad we get to talk about it. I think we did talk about it in a previous episode.
We have, but
the nerds, but it wasn't a deep dive.
Yeah, I think we mentioned it in what we've been watching, and we wanted to sort of have a full blown discussion, seasons 1 and 2, as we go along. So I think that's it.
Cool,
Jack. I don't have my copy of the script open. If you want to take us home.
If you would like to keep in touch with either of us, you can find me on Twitter at @LackOfSurprise1. That's all one word with a number 1 at the end. And Ian,
I'm I'm youtube.com/passionofthenerd is really the best. If you would make a comment there, that's kind of the place I'm most likely to see stuff anymore.
Yeah. But with that being said, I guess we shall see you next time.
All right, Coyote Moon and Fleabag next week, or some
next
week.
Episode.
All right, friends. Thanks so much. Bye.